A very good morning, students. Hopefully, all of you are in high spirits and up to the requirements as we move ahead. Now, let's focus on from where we left in the previous segment. My previous segment was primarily focused on GDP, NDP, GNP, and NNP, but all at market prices. Remember, we discussed at market prices. Now, the same variables will be focused with relevance to factor cost. Now remember, what was the difference between market price and factor cost? It was net indirect taxes, right? I'm not going to focus too much upon market price because our focus is on factor cost today. So let's try to understand what is factor cost first. Now, factor cost primarily means the cost which we pay to four factors of production: labor, which gets compensation of employees; land, which gets rent; capital, which earns interest; and entrepreneur, who earns profit in the process. Right? Remember, we are not adding or adjusting net indirect taxes yet, because if we do it, then the prices will change before it reaches the market. Therefore, we are not talking about market price. Our government adjustment is avoided in this discussion. So we will focus only on that cost, which is at the time when the product is ready and is coming out of the factory once it is manufactured, in simple terms. So, what is GDP at factor cost? Let's concentrate on this part. First thing first, it is gross. Now, when you say gross, remember, it means inclusive of depreciation. New goods as well as those which we have produced for repair of the previous segments of good. It means the gross value of the goods which are produced. In that, what we can remember that it is the sum of the factor cost, right? Gross value of the goods represented as sum of the factor cost produced within the domestic territory of an economy. Now, when I say domestic territory, you know it, whether it is by resident or non-resident, important it is to be within domestic territory. So, GDP at factor cost basically means the value of final goods, right, represented in terms of factor costs produced within the domestic territory. And because I have written the word gross, it means it is inclusive of depreciation. Clear? It is inclusive of depreciation. Am I clear, students? I hope it's reasonably clear. What is GDP at factor cost? So GDP at factor cost is nothing but sum of the factor costs, or the total of the factor cost, which is all these four which are involved in the manufacturing of the final goods and services within the domestic territory, and importantly, it is inclusive of depreciation. Now, if I relate with this one, the next variable which I can easily relate with is GNP at factor cost. Now, what is GNP at factor cost? GNP at factor cost is sum of GDP at factor cost, which we have just found, and net factor income from abroad. It is the sum of GDP at factor cost and net factor income from abroad. Once you add both of them, you will arrive at what you call it as gross national product at factor cost. Again, what is the important thing to remember? It represents the value of the goods, gross value of the goods, inclusive of depreciation, right? But most importantly, produced by the residents of the economy, because we are concentrating on the word national, and therefore to arrive at GNP at factor cost, what you will remember? You simply add net factor income from abroad to GDP at factor cost. I hope it's quite clear. Now, let's move to the next segment, which I take NDP at factor cost. I mention it as number 7th. Now, what is NDP at factor cost? Very importantly, it is the sum of the cost of factors, sum of the cost of the factors in the process of production, sum of the factors in the process of production, wherein the goods are produced within the domestic territory. So how we can find out? Simply adding the various factors who are involved in the process of production. And what are these factors? These are these 4 factors. Very importantly, again, if you remember, in this case we will exclude depreciation. I hope it's quite visible. We will be excluding which term? We will be excluding depreciation in our study. So that means we will only give importance to the new goods and whatever is the value or the cost which is distributed among 4 factors of the new goods in this year, that is what is NDP at factor cost. Am I clear with? I hope all of you are understanding it. Now, very importantly, NDP at factor cost, students, is also called as domestic income. What it is called as? Domestic income. I hope all of you are understanding it. That is the other name which you can remember for NDP at factor cost. Am I clear? Now, I'll come to the last variable. What is the relative last variable which we can continue from NDP at factor cost? We're trying to make the term D into N. So it becomes NNP at factor cost. Right? NNP at factor cost is also referred as net national product at factor cost. What about the previous one I did not mention here, GNP? It is gross national product at factor cost. So just remember the full form of the abbreviations which we have used. National income, important abbreviations. Now let's come to NNP at factor cost, net national product at factor cost. Now, what is this one? It is nothing but, if we have to take the sum of cost of factors, we can make a formula very simply from taking NDP at factor cost and adding net factor income from abroad to the same to arrive at NNP at factor cost. Simply we have to convert the term domestic into national. So what I'll do, it is nothing but the sum of NDP at factor cost and net factor income from abroad. So in order to make a domestic concept into a national concept, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take again at the factor cost the value of the goods which are produced within domestic territory and adding the net factor income from abroad, which is the difference between our factors, our resident earning from abroad, and their factors or the residents earning from within the domestic territory of India. Once you add this one, you arrive at NNP at factor cost, which is nothing but the other name for net national product at factor cost. Clear? Now, very interestingly, NNP at factor cost in simple term is also referred as a country's national income. What it is referred as? Country's national income. It is the sum of factors, payments which we made on the basis of residentship rather than on the basis of domestic territory. So what is NNP at factor cost? It is the sum of NDP at factor cost and net factor income from abroad. Hopefully all of you got into the scheme of things and have understood it. Just remember one important thing here. To convert domestic into national, net factor income from abroad is required.